All right. Welcome, everybody. If you are just joining us, we have 50 participants on the line. Let's bump that number up. Let's shoot for our daily target of 100 people. Please let your teammates know that we have Mr. Christion Sadler as our trainer today. Now, if you haven't heard Christion's story, back before getting started with Renatus in his young teens, Christion was quite a troublesome young boy. He was kicked out of class a lot. He went to an alternative school. And as he got older, he realized he was in quite a bit of financial scarcity, had a daily wage job in steel fabrication. But around this time, he had heard about real estate and the wealth generation opportunities that it could create for him and change his life. He started attending different guru events, but really felt like he wasn't going very far until he found Renatus. Started getting around people he wanted to be like, showing up early, staying late, helping out wherever he could. And because he was tenacious, because of his determination, his persistence, he has now been in the real estate industry for over 13 years. He's done multiple real estate transactions, rentals, flicks and flips, land development, all kinds of different transactions that have netted over 6 figures. He is a marketing leader, a PIT team member, and one of the founding team members of Team Elevate. So I am fortunate and grateful and honored to introduce Christion Sadler as our speaker today. So good morning, Christion. How are you today?
Good morning, Abby. I am great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. Hey, thank you, Abby, for everything that you do in starting off these calls. And thank you for being here today, getting us started with some great videos and getting us in tune with the founder of the company and our one and only Woody Woodward, who always keeps us thinking about what we can do better and how we can improve. So, folks, we have been talking about the basics. What I mean by that is we've been talking about the 4 money-making activities. Find the people, tell the story, build for events, and follow up. And I've repeated each week, the saying that comes from the martial arts, where they say, "I'm not afraid of the man who knows 10,000 kicks. I'm afraid of the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times." Right? Now, we all know that practice does not make perfect, but practice and evaluation and adjustments is what makes perfect, right? It happens over time. So if you're practicing things that do not work, if you're practicing with improper form, you're only going to continue to do things that don't work or continue to have improper form. So if you think about this from the perspective of sports, if you're going to go into a particular sport and you want to be an expert, if you focus strictly on learning one thing, the key is you've got to get some direction. You've got to, watch what happens with each step, with each kick, with each throw, whatever it is that you're practicing, you're going to make adjustments over time. And the same thing is in your business. So we talked about finding the people, and we gave some insights there in where to find those people and some guidelines on where the majority of the people have been found throughout this throughout the whole life of this company. I've done many trainings, and oftentimes I will ask, where did you all come from? Meaning, how did you find Renatus? And what you'll find is, time and time again, the majority came from warm market or, some type of a networking. So basically, semi-warm market. So we also talked about telling the story. And we went through and we talked about the fact that every single one of you have a story. Each of you, as soon as you come to that first 4 pillars event or 5 pillars event, and you learn about velocity banking, and you learn about the tax strategies. Once you learn about how you can, buy real estate without using your own money or credit, you have a story. And in fact, if you take things like the tax strategies, if you take things like velocity banking, you can actually go through and do the math. And there's been people, in fact, I can think of Kip and Laura out in Washington. You know what? When they came in and they saw what we were doing, they were introduced to velocity banking. And for them, they looked at the amount of interest that they were going to be paying on their home. They looked at how much they were going to save just simply by doing the math of running velocity banking. And that was a six-figure story for them. That was a six-figure, positive for them, meaning that was going to be interest that they were not paying, right? And so many of you have a huge story. And it's just the fact of going ahead and being willing to share it. So we talked about telling the story. We also talked about building for events. And last week when I was talking about building for events, I shared with you, about a young couple that are absolutely killing it right now. They are just blowing up in this marketplace. I mean, almost $90,000 in 60 days. And they're doing it by incentivizing their team members to get to work. And they're building for events. And they don't wait for an event to happen. They'll create the event. So I talked about the fact how, one, if somebody comes to them and says, I want your help in, learning this business and marketing, then what he'll say to them is he'll say, okay, great. Get 10 people at this place by this time, and I'll do a presentation for you. And just by that simple act and that challenge that he sets up for people, those who meet it, which apparently is the majority of them, because they don't want to lose the opportunity to have one there for them, right? Because basically what he says is, if you don't do it, don't come back to me. Meaning if you don't go take that action, if you don't go, fill a room with people, then don't ask me for help, because it's as simple as that. And so as I've been watching what Juan and Jordan are doing, it's these simple acts. But with that simplicity also comes consistency. So they're very consistent in what they're doing. And so this next piece, this final money-making activity of following up, there's that same principle. You've got to be consistent in what you're doing and how you're doing it and how often you're doing it. You've got to make those adjustments along the way. And if you're not doing the first three activities, it's pretty much impossible to be consistent in your follow-up. I mean, who are you going to follow up with? If you haven't found the people, if you haven't told the story, if you haven't built for events, there's nobody there to follow up with. And the fortune, as they say, is in the follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up, meaning if you do those first three and you're not consistent following up, meaning you don't follow up, well, then you've spent a whole lot of time, a whole lot of effort for no reason at all. Because what I've found is people don't enroll themselves, right? And people don't enroll in a group. People enroll by you asking for the order and entering that into your business center. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do you move that conversation along? How do you ask for that order? And how do we then engage them in the process of taking action? So let me switch over here and share my screen. Move my controls out of the way. All right. So you've got somebody that you found and you've told and you've built to the events, and now you're coming to the end of the event. Well, there's a couple of key points that I want to talk about because follow-up starts right now. Right there at that event where they've come, here's some things you want to think about. See, what I've found is oftentimes people are so uncomfortable in that next conversation that they're not sure what to do. And so the natural reaction is to follow the crowd, right? So when all is said and done, the end of the presentation, people start getting up, and what happens? Everybody gets up with them. So if you are in the room with your guest, here's what I'm going to suggest to you. Don't get up. Don't get up. This is one of the first steps to engaging that person, right? And to moving the conversation forward is if they are there next to you, especially, right? If you're sitting next to your guest, maybe this is a friend that you went and picked up and you brought them to the meeting with you. When we get to the end of the event, don't get up. Simply turn to that person on your right or on your left and engage them in conversation, okay? Now, what does that conversation look like? Well, we always want to talk to the part of their mind that wants to do this, not the part of their mind that's going to come up with excuses of why they shouldn't do this, right? Because there's really two sides of the brain that is happening. There's two minds inside this one individual when they get to the end of a presentation where there's that much information. Typically, there's one mind that is excited. It's emotional, right? It is thinking about all of the possibilities. It's considering things that it learned. And then there's the other side of the mind. And that is the analytical side of the mind. There's not a lot of emotion there. There's mostly logic. And so with that, and actually let me, put this in here. So you've got your person, right? And if we divide their mind in half, right? You take this half of their mind, it's thinking about all of the possibilities. It is typically run through emotion, right? So you've got emotion, you've got possibilities, you have excitement. Wonder. You got a little bit of dreaming going on over here. This is all coming from that emotional side of the mind, right? And we've got somebody off mute. Yeah. Tight, guys. All right. And then we have this other side of the mind over here, right? And this side of the mind is logic. Now with the logic side of the mind, this is where they are analyzing. How do I spell analyze? Analysis. Well, pretend it says what it's supposed to say. All right, so they're going through the analysis of it all. They are looking for problems. They are considering why not, right? All the reasons, right? They have all these emotions over here of possibilities and excitement and wonder and dreaming, and then they have the other side that is focused on logic, that is analyzing and looking for problems in there, and it's automatically coming up with their excuses. right? It's thinking about all these reasons why it can't or won't or might not, or, you know, are we sure, right? So it's questioning. So there's two things that can happen here is, you know, when we come and we talk to this person, right? So you come and you walk up, right? Here you are after the presentation, or if you're sitting together, you simply turn to that person and you can say one of two things, right? So we're going to put you on this side and you on this side. On the emotion side, you're going to say, what did you like best? And this is automatically going to get your friendly little prospect here talking towards all of these things, right? Whereas if you come up and say, what did you think? Or what do you think? So what do you think? What did you think? What are they going to do? They're going to speak to all of this. So I want you to think about that from the get-go. From every conversation that you have, once they've seen information, you always want to start that conversation on the emotional side of their brain. Now, here's the thing. People make decisions out of emotion. They justify those decisions with logic. So if you can keep people over here long enough for them to make a decision, they will use this side here to justify this decision here. Before they've made the decision, before they have made the decision, all of this is working against you for the most part, right? However, once they've made the decision, this side over here is working in your favor. So you need both sides of the brain, because if they can't justify it with logic, guess what? They're not gonna follow through. They're not gonna make it happen. So start off that conversation with, what did you like best? So what stuck out to you the most? So, you know, out of everything that you saw, what intrigued you? Right? I'm always leading them to the things that they liked most, or that caught their attention, that they liked, right? And that's key to the beginning of that conversation. Now, once you engage them in that conversation, you're going to build for that next event. You're always going to always book a meeting from a meeting. And if we think about the system, right, and we're going through that a bam bam, if they've seen the information, you want to build for that next event, which is going to be a follow-up. Following up is what we're talking about. Well, that's one of the events. Now, there is a group follow-up in many locations. However, what I've found is almost 100% of the time, almost, those people put in their order one-on-one. So no matter how good we build our systems, right, it's usually going to take you, going through the ABAM-FAM, getting somebody to a follow-up, and then asking for the order. AFTO, asking for the order. So start the conversation on the emotional side of their mind. And then as you engage in that emotional side of their mind, book to that next event. Now that can be, for some of you, that may be that you simply meet with them right there. Maybe the next event is, let's sit down and talk about, a strategy for you to get going on this thing. And then you ask for the order. So please understand, you don't have to separate these. You don't have to spread them over time. This doesn't have to take you a week or a month or, any other amount of time. It can be done in a day if you are able to do so. However, you always want to make sure, first exposure, move them to a follow-up, ask them for the order, and then your key is you are following up. And what I mean by that is if you've asked for the order, but they don't yet have the funding, right? You've broke down a plan for them to get to the funding. Well, you got to set an expectation right there from the get-go about how you are going to engage with them in that conversation, how you are going to follow up with them throughout this process. Because if it's, yeah, I'll go try some of those things, and you say, okay, let's touch base. Guys, touching base doesn't happen. If you think about the amount of times you said, let's touch base, and then you talked at the exact time that you thought you would talk, well, it doesn't happen. So you always want to set that follow-up. In other words, you're going to book a meeting from a meeting, right? A BAM fan. Follow-up. Ask for the order. Follow-up. BAM fam. Over and over and over again. And guess what? The most successful people in this business don't stop here with their prospects. See, you're always building from a meeting, you're always booking a meeting from a meeting. And so you get somebody to enter their order, and then what's next? You're booking them to that next event, and then what's next? And then you're booking them for a conversation to talk about the marketing side of the business, and then what's next? And you're following up with them to to enroll them as an IMA, and then what's next? Then you're booking them, for a strategy session to get them calling their top 10, and then what's next? You're following up with them to find out if they were able to contact those people, and then what's next? And then you're booking the meeting from the meeting, because now you're booking the meeting where they're going to bring people to the meeting. You guys understand where this is going, right? This cycle can build upon itself. And the most successful people that I've seen in this business, the people that I look up to, that I admire, they just continue to build and book a meeting from a meeting.
I have one mail.
All right, hold on. Got somebody off mute again.
I know so-and-so's son.
All right. So, what does this conversation look like? Let's get into that real quick. And when you're in a follow-up, what is the process of a follow-up? So for me, I always start with questions. Now, when I start with questions, what do you think my questions are guided towards? Questions about possibilities. I want to ask emotion-based questions, right? So overall, what have you liked best out of what you're seeing, what you're seeing so far? I may even ask for the order right there, right? I may do a little test close. So if they, tell me what they've liked, and I say, so can you see yourself getting started with us? It's a little test close, right? Then the next thing I'm typically going to do is I'm going to say, give me an idea. right? So Lynn, I just did a follow-up with Lynn a few days ago. And Lynn makes a couple $100,000 a year. She's been to the presentation out there in Washington. She wants something that will move her out of what she's doing now and give her a little bit more freedom. Because right now, making a couple $100,000 a year, she's kind of tied down to the docks, literally. She works at the docks. She runs a little company that that deals with the boats coming in and out and doing those things. And so she wants a little more freedom. Now, I didn't know she wanted more freedom in the very beginning because we had the conversation. She shared with me light details of why she was interested in my ad and, why she's interested in real estate. And then, she went to a presentation. We set the time and we did a Zoom webinar, Zoom follow-up, right? And in that Zoom follow-up, somebody came off mute again. All right. In that Zoom follow-up, I started asking questions. And one of the questions I asked her was, I said, Lynn, paint the picture for me. If we look 2 years down the road, if we go 24 months down the road, and you're having a conversation with me, and in that conversation, you're saying, Christian, this was the best decision I've ever made. What would it have to look like for you to be able to say that? Take me through. I mean, what would you be seeing, like, as far as an income? What do you think that you would be doing, and what would your lifestyle look like? Just paint the picture for me as far as how that looks, and and just kind of guide me along. Let me hear what that sounds like. And so I'm trying to use different different words in there, and I'm probably not saying it exactly the way that I said it to her, but I'm saying things like, what does it look like? Paint the picture for me. That is the site. And then I'm also talking about I'm using sound words. I'm using I'm trying to use all the different types of words for her, because I'm not sure yet what type of learner she is. I'm not sure what type of personality type she is. So I'm trying to use words that are site-based and sound-based and so on and so forth. What does it feel like, to have that type of success, right? So I'm just kind of working in these different words, trying to spark the creative side of her mind that's going to talk about possibilities. And so that's when she went in, and that's when she actually shared with me, well, I've got a pretty good thing going on. I'm just looking for something that I can not only replace my income with, but I can feel really good about. I want something, and this is when I started understanding that she's a feel person, right? And so she was talking about how it feels, and she was talking about, the opportunity to travel, and how she's always wanted to travel, but she hasn't been able to do that. And she talked about how for a period of time last year, she was actually working with a billionaire. And so she got to spend a lot of time with him, and he was constantly taking on more opportunities, but he was never happy. And she just wants, to be able to earn the income, but also feel like, she's making a difference in her life, and feel like she's able to go through and go to the places that she's always wanted to go to. And she doesn't want it to where she can never turn it off. That's not the lifestyle that she dreamed of. And so with that, when we started with those questions of possibilities, I then was able to ask her the questions of the logic. So what questions do you have right now about, that I can answer for you that will help you decide whether this can get you there, whether what we have can take you to where you want to be? And so she started talking about, systems, and I want to know what it looks like. I want to know what it, I want you to, and this is where she kind of changed on me, right? She started talking about looks like, and I want you to tell me, what I would be going through, and what my first steps are. And so all I did was say, okay, that's great. So if I share with you the 3 phases to your first deal, would that be helpful? The 3 phases to getting into your first deal and what that looks like. And, if you, decide that you like that strategy, then you continue on with that strategy. And if you don't like that strategy, then we look at other strategies and so on and so forth. Absolutely. So in these 3 phases, I want to have her imagining herself going through that process. You want your prospect imagining and being able to visualize themselves going through those 3 phases. So it's pretty simple. First phase is going through the essentials, and here's what you're learning and here's why those classes are important, right? You want to build into that why of the whole building a foundation before you start building wealth, and all the reasons why they're going to go through those 10 classes first. And then the next phase starts after they've gone through their investor ID class. And I shared Jay's story, and I talk about how, he was bouncing all over the place and he just didn't feel like he was really passionate about the strategies that he was using. And he broke this down in a method to where we can actually, figure out what our investor ID is and move forward from there. And so that is how you move to phase 2. And phase 2 is where you're actually going to choose that strategy. So as you choose that strategy, then you're going to focus on the vocational track. And in the vocational tracks, you're going to learn about all the different aspects of that particular strategy. And, it's about 60 hours of education in phase 1. And what I've found is for, many people, they're going to spend about 60 hours of education in phase 2 before they feel confident and competent enough to go take action. And that's where we're going to move to phase 3, because in phase 2, it's all about learning and building your team. So a lot of that phase 2 is networking and it's building relationships. In phase 3, it's all about action. And I talk about how in that action, they might have to talk to 100 people to get to, they might have to have 100 people before they even get 5 potential offers. And out of those 5 potential offers, 2 of those offers likely not even going to be a good scenario. So they're going to walk away from those. And I talk about how, when they're making offers, they're going to build in their clauses that allow them to escape, right? The escape clauses. And, I kind of, build the safety of the whole situation in there and how they want to, mitigate risk and all those types of things. And so in that phase 3, you're taking those actions. And the way that you know that you've got through phase 3 is you've got a deal. And I build upon, that deal, and how if it's a fix and flip, it's likely to take 120 days, 90 to 120 days before they see a paycheck. So the key is never stop taking action. Never stop learning, never stop taking action. I want them to be visualizing themselves, to be imagining themselves in this process of continual learning and continual action and getting results. And then what I do is I say, how long do you feel like it would take you? I mean, mapping this out, what do you feel like it's going to take you to go through this? And, they set a goal, they set a timeline. And then I set expectation in working with me. So one of the things I talk about is that I'm a guide, right? And I actually share with them. I'll share and I'll say, you know what? There's many people that will actually call me a mentor. And I really don't like to use that word for myself because really I'm more of a guide than anything. Because anybody that I've seen get results, I take no credit for their results because I'm also not going to take credit for their failure. I'm more of a guide. So when it comes down to it, I'm not going to take you through steps 1 through 15, right? I'm more of the next step guy. So the education is there for you to learn all the steps and the hows and the whats and the whys. And if you come to me and you're looking for, some guidance, that guidance is not going to come typically in the form of teaching. I am not your real estate coach. But what I'm, really good at is saying, here's the next step. And if you'll bring me the results from that step, then we can talk about the following step. But if you start asking me about a step that's 10 steps down the line, guess what? I'm just going to refer you back to the education because that's what it's designed for. So I'm more of a guide. Does that make sense? Yes, absolutely. Okay, great. Then I'm going to actually show them. So I'm going to give them a test drive. I'm going to show them the education. I'm going to walk them through. I'm going to actually take them into their, or my business center, I should say. They don't have one yet. And so I'm going to take them, and I'm not sure why I put 2 E's on there, but I'm going to take them into the education. I want them to know exactly what they're getting. I want to talk about the different, options that they have and going through. And then I'm going to ask for the order. And with that, I'm going to ask a question, and then one of the key points is shut up, right? So the way that I ask for the order typically is I refer back to the 3 phases to your first deal, and I say, the thing is we've got to get you to step 1. So in order to get you to step 1, we've got to get access to the education. Have you thought about how you're going to fund that, and are you ready to get started? If they know how they're funding it and they're ready to get started, we put in their order. What oftentimes though happens is this is where we've got to actually find the funding. So I just tell stories. I've actually done plenty of webinars on this, on finding the funding and telling stories and letting them imagine the possibilities. And then what do? I ask for the order. And we're going to continue to go through this cycle back and forth and back and forth. And we're going to, talk about possibilities. We're going to give them instructions, or I shouldn't say give them instructions. We're going to let them tell us what their next step is and what they're going to do to find the funding. We're going to set a time to follow up with them, and we're going to ask for the order. And we're going to ask for the order. And we're going to ask for the order. And the thing is, overall, don't feel bad about engaging these people in the conversation of taking action. Because, overall, if you can't close them, you can't help them. If you can't get them to put in their order and get access to this education, you can't change their life. And so set the expectation up front where they know you're there for their best interest. Right? You're there as a guide to help them get out of their own way and change their life. So therefore, you're going to hold their feet to the fire. And if they tell you that they're going to do something, you expect them to do it. Again, folks, remember, they need you way more than you need them. And sometimes people get that twisted because they think, oh man, I'm going to get $10,000. I really need this $10,000. This $10,000 could do so many things. And when you get focused on the money and what it can do for you, and you forget about the fact of the much, 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 much bigger upside for them, they're going to feel like you're after their money. But when you focus on how this can change their life, that's when they're going to see you as somebody that's helping them. And I'll kind of end on this note, folks. I have never, not once, I cannot think of one time that I've put in somebody's combo order where they didn't thank me. People should be thanking you to give you $20,000 because, quite frankly, if they do something with it, their value so far exceeds the value that you're going to get. So that's the training for the day. We've got through the 4 money-making activities: find the people, tell the story, build for events, follow up. It's your turn to go out there and do it. Thanks for joining me, folks.
Thank you.